There's a wonderful story of Reagan deciding that he would go to Berlin. He'd gone to Berlin in 1967 as governor, and he had a throwaway line. He said, "That wall sure is ugly. They ought to tear it down." 20 years later, re-elected, having carried 49 states, he's going back to Berlin. And he remembers that line, and he says, "I want to say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." The State Department took it out. It came back to the White House, it was edited out. Reagan hand wrote it back in. It went back to the State Department. It came back. I was told this story by Secretary of State George Shultz. Reagan wrote it in a second time. It went back over. It came back taken out again. Reagan picked up the phone, called the Secretary of State and said, "Georgie, I want you to tell your editor, I'm the president, they're not." It stayed in. Now I didn't know this story until a couple weeks ago. The morning they're in Berlin, and we have this scene in the movie clips that I made about Reagan. The morning they're in Berlin, the senior staff begs him to take it out. They said, "You're going to irritate Gorbachev, and you're going to look stupid because the wall's going to be there for 30 or 40 more years." And of course, fell 2 years later. Reagan ignored him, cheerfully did what he wanted. Here's why I'm telling this story. Somebody who understood nothing could hear that story and say, this was a president who was trapped in minutia. Why would a president of the United States fight over one line in a speech? Or you could say the following. This was a man who since 1947 had been studying communism, who had a grand strategy for the defeat of the Soviet Empire, and who believed that moral dominance was one of his biggest weapons. And he was engaged in breaking the Soviet Empire, and any detail that helped him break the Soviet Empire was worth his attention. Now notice the difference in how you think of it. I think that what we have to do at the presidential level is say, these are the three big things America needs. Reagan had three. I think three is the right number, just mythically. His three were simple. Rebuild the American economy by cutting taxes and regulations and praising entrepreneurs. Rebuild American civic spirit, reminding us why we're American and what it means to be American. Defeat the Soviet Empire. If you think about it, it's an amazing, astonishing 8 years. And here's a man who in 8 years accomplished all three. Now, there were 100 things he didn't do particularly well. The way I describe it is, Reagan understood that lions have to hunt zebras and antelope because if they catch chipmunks, they starve to death. And that Reagan was a genius. Reagan would get up every morning and say, what are my zebras and antelopes? Rebuild the economy, renew American civic culture, defeat the Soviet Empire. He'd walk into the Oval Office about 10 in the morning, and chipmunks would run it. And the federal government has $10 billion chipmunks. And Reagan was very patient and pleasant, and he'd say, you know, you are a terrific chipmunk. Have you met Jim Baker? And his chief of staff became the largest chipmunk collector on the planet. But if even a tiny thing for his three major goals came in the office, his adrenaline pumped up, his attention pumped up, he focused tightly, spent 6 months studying Gorbachev before the first summit. Took everything we knew from every intelligence agency in the world for 6 months. Because that mattered. Because he was going to take apart the empire.